Hello. What up, y'all? Welcome, welcome. I hope everybody here is having a great weekend so far. Alrighty. Okay, guys and girls. We are going to start out today with a lovely trail derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, which is near the border of the state that I live in, PA. So we're gonna talk about that, and we're gonna see what the fuck's going on over there.
The Republican Party got about $6 million from the rail industry, and Senate Republicans started beating the drum for Trump to repeal the rule.
It's been 10 days since a freight train carrying hazardous material derailed and exploded in the village of East Palestine, Ohio. And now we're getting a clearer picture of the policy failures that led up to this. This is a case that very likely could have been prevented if the proper protections were in place. And I'm going to get to a video shortly here explaining a bit of that, and then I'll get to more around this company, just how much money they have made while laying people off, causing even more of a safety risk. But let me play this video here. This was produced by Armand Aviram, and you'll see David Sirota in here. This is from The Lever. This is a great video breaking down the policy failures that very likely led to what happened in East Palestine.
We just saw in the middle of the country a giant chemical fireball, 100.
Sorry, guys. Let me turn off the music real quick, just so we can really take this in. Okay.
What happened in East Palestine?
We just saw in the middle of the country a giant
12.
chemical fireball, 100-foot flames, and very few people asking questions about what led up to this. So there was a derailment in 2012 in New Jersey,
releasing 20,000 gallons of dangerous chemicals and noxious gas.
You see this shit right here? This shit pisses me the fuck off, dude. Because these companies can clearly just invest a little more money into their fucking infrastructure, into better brakes, into better equipment, into more modern like technologies, but they don't fucking do it, and they just do it. They put it back into stock buybacks, or they'll lobby politicians. They'll fucking just corrupt, just giving politicians money, and hopefully they'll do what you say. And this is what happens, man. We fucking destroy the planet. We kill animals. We destroy the water nearby. We fucking give people cancer. This is what happens. It's fucking sad.
Into the air.
There's children in the town that are being affected by this.
And there was pressure on regulators to do something about those kinds of trains. And so the Obama administration had a rule proposed to better regulate these trains. The National Transportation Safety Board told the regulatory agency, said, listen, these regulations should broadly cover not just oil, they should cover what's known as Class 2 chemicals. And the chemical industry lobbyists went to work pressuring the regulatory agency to limit the definition of what a high hazard flammable train is. Limit it in a way that the train in Ohio, that kind of train ended up not being classified as a high hazard flammable train.
The NTSB closely monitoring 4 cars that are filled with vinyl.
You see, because they lobbied against classifying it as a high classified chemical or whatever. They didn't do it. They labeled it as oil. No, we're just carrying oil. It's just oil. Because it will cost more money for them to have to label it as whatever it actually is than to lie about it.
Chloride, it has been found to be linked to cancer.
Trains that were subject to this rule were going to be required to use a special kind of new braking system to try to deter or at least reduce the damage from derailments.
ECP delivers the unmatched performance of air brakes with the precision of electronic communications.
Most trains in the country are still using technology from the Civil War era. But the moment the government was considering making it a...
We're using Civil War era technology. Imagine if our military was still using Civil War era technology. Do you think they would just sit around and be like, oh well, our military has Civil War era technology. Oh well, whatever, we'll just leave it there. It don't matter. No, they would advance that shit in a snap of a finger. Snap of a finger. Of course. But that's because it's a government. The military is government owned. If the military was fucking privatized and corporate owned, oh my god, dude. They would be slacking. We would have outdated weapons. We'll probably be using AKs and shit. You know what I mean? That's what happens when you leave something up to a corporation. They cut corners to save money and then give that money to their fucking shareholders.
Mandated. The railroad industry's changed its tune. It cited cost concerns to pressure against that rule.
We want to see federal regulations when they're necessary, not just in reaction.
They're always necessary, not just when they're necessary.
Obama's rule included that measure to expand the larger use of those brakes on the nation's rail system. But in that 2016 election year, the Republican Party got about $6 million from the rail industry. And Senate Republicans started beating the drum for Trump to repeal the rule. Donald Trump repealed the brake rule so that the industry does not have to even start
to
use these kinds of brakes.
Look at that.
Former Federal Railroad Administration regulator told us that these brakes, which are known as ECP brakes, would have mitigated a disaster like this. And we just learned today, after the publication of our story, federal officials told us that this train did not have those brakes on the train.
Wow.
All right, so before I go even deeper into this, I just want to give credit there to The Lever. The Lever does absolutely fantastic investigative reporting.
Pisses me off.
They are breaking stories. They do far more than the vast majority of what the mainstream press does, and they're leading the charge on this story and exposing why this happened. So just essentially summarize that video there. David Sirota tweets out, chemical lobbyists got Obama officials to exempt trains like the one in Ohio from hazmat safety rules. Rail lobbyists got Trump officials to repeal rules requiring better brakes on trains. And Secretary Pete hasn't moved to fix the safety rules. So there is blame to go around here. blame on the Obama administration, blame on the Trump administration, and blame on Biden and Pete Buttigieg for not patching what they can do with their power. They don't need Congress to change these rules.
I'm gonna wear
So
my phone.
before I get more on that, this is just another one of these companies that are absolutely disgusting. So this is an article from October 2021. Unions
don't know.
allege Norfolk Southern, that is the freight company that had this derailment, that their job cuts saddled engineers with other duties. So again, this is October 2021. Just a few months later, in March, here's what they did. Norfolk Southern announces new $10 billion stock repurchase program.
$10 billion. Oh my god, dude. They did a stock buyback, which is basically when you take all your profits and you throw them into your own stock to make their stock artificially inflate. $10 billion, and they couldn't invest like $1 billion into their brakes or whatever.
So $10 billion in stock buybacks
Fucking
to
disgusting,
artificially
man.
inflate
Disgusting.
their own stock, just months after laying countless people off and saddling their existing employees
Fucked
with
up.
more duties. Again, putting
It's fucked up.
even more of a strain on the system and potentially
I want to see these CEOs work on the fucking trains. I want to see them try to put out a fucking fire. That's what I want to see.
causing even further safety risks. It's all about as much money for the executives as possible, regardless of what impact
You know they
that may
can't.
cause.
They don't know what the fuck
And
to
this
do.
derailment is another example of that. So the Lever has a larger piece on the Pete Buttigieg inaction on this. Quote, there will be more derailments. So in the aftermath of a fiery Ohio train derailment, Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg's department has not moved to reinstate an Obama-era safety rule aimed at expanding the use of better braking technology, even though a former federal safety official recently warned Congress that without the better brakes, quote, there will be more derailments and more releases of hazardous materials. Instead, transportation regulators have now been considering a rail industry-backed proposal that could weaken existing brake safety rules. So while this derailment's going on, they're considering actually weakening rules around braking. And the details on that here.
Wow.
There's at least one brake safety proposal currently under consideration by federal rail regulators, an industry-backed rule relaxing brake testing requirements. In 2021, in response to a petition from the Association of American Railroads, the FRA proposed amendments to existing safety standards that would reduce the frequency of brake testing on freight cars equipped with an electronic inspection tracking system.
This shit is
corporate communism. Corporate communism.
That's what this is, guys. This is literally corporate communism. It's not human communism. You know, they're not helping us. They're just helping the corporations.
Corporate communism.
Changes under consideration are staunchly opposed by 5 major rail unions.
And it makes me cry.
It's not enough to already
even look at them.
The lives of countless people at risk with these derailments, the lack of safety that is in place, but
yeah, when these corporations like destroy the environment, you know what I mean? And like you ask them to like help with the cleanup, they're like,
call a crackhead. call a crackhead.
Call a crackhead to help you clean up the environment.
Have to go even further to try and save even a few more cents, because that is how capitalism operates. Let's get to this interview with David Sirota. So
that's not what I wanted to do.
You're the Republican Party.
They're considering actually weakening, because that is how capitalism operates. Let's get to this interview with David Sirota. So there's a piece in this interview that I really want to share here. This goes to further exposing how disgusting this company is.
The railroad industry cited an amount, $3 billion. Putting these brakes on the trains that would be required to have them would cost a total of $3 billion. Now, that's about 2 weeks of operating revenue that the train system pulls in, 2 weeks of revenue
Here we go.
in a single year, meaning it's a tiny amount of money when you're talking about the entire rail industry, but they didn't want to spend it. And my guess is they didn't want to spend it because they presume that their current safety systems are fine, and if their current safety systems fail, that governments, whether local, state, or federal, will pick up the tab for the cleanup, for the disaster. That cost is socialized to the public, not internalized by the private company. So they didn't. They made a cost-benefit analysis that, yeah, maybe the brakes would make things safer. They're the ones who actually said these brakes would improve safety. But in their cost-benefit analysis, it still wasn't worth it for their profit interests.
Privatizing the gains and socializing the losses. This is across industries.
Yep.
This is how capitalism operates without any proper regulation in place. That's how it's meant to operate. Because why would they follow the rules? Why would they do anything if they don't have to? If it's going to save them some money? If it's going to mean a higher profit margin and more money for the shareholders? Why would they bother putting any of these restrictions
We gotta
in place when they
tax
don't
them,
need to?
guys. We need to tax
That's why you
and
need proper
regulate.
regulation around these
Very much
industries.
regulate
Otherwise, this keeps
these
happening.
corporations.
Man, the amount of lobbying, the amount of corporate greed, the amount of just absolute corruption at the heart of policymaking is showcased in this single story. Now, a couple last things here. So there's, of course, some pushback in defense of Pete Buttigieg because people are crazy. So Patrick here in this quote tweet says, Congress reinstates laws. Cabinet members can only enforce existing laws. They are law enforcers, not lawmakers. Ignoring the fact that the Trump administration, without Congress, changed the rule from the Obama administration around the braking. David Sirota here replies saying, Pete Buttigieg is the Transportation Secretary. The Transportation Secretary has safety rule-making authority. This kind of excuse is pathetic, inaccurate, and yet sadly common among those who think their job after a chemical explosion is to defend a cabinet secretary. It's very important to be objective when looking at a story like this. Yes, of course, you can see the direct connection between the Trump administration and the lack of safety.
Generally speaking,
braking,
Chinese people
Civil
look
War
Chinese.
era braking still on trains, to me, it's comically insane. Yes, you can make that direct connection. You can also make the connection to the Obama administration, and then also make the connect about the rules around chemicals and how the lobbying around that ensured that there would be no extra protections for those Class 2 chemicals that could cause an explosion like this or this deadly impact. But there's also
that is my own sperm.
The current administration that has the power to do something now and haven't. Like, when I first read this connection, my immediate thought is, why, as the Biden administration, why don't you come in and immediately look at what Trump did?
Yeah, for real.
And what you can undo, what makes sense to undo.
For real.
Maybe he did some things that made sense, but why not look at what he did and see, hey, we can change this back when it comes to certain rules around climate protections. He reversed a bunch of stuff just unilaterally because he could with his power. Why not look at all of those, reverse all of those back, look at rules like this, reverse this back. You think this is the first thing you would do when coming in? If you really are concerned about the impact that Trump had, as you claim to while you were running for president, why wouldn't this be the first thing you do, is look at what Trump did and reverse what he did?
That is my own
to defend not doing that, to defend the inaction here,
That is
just
some
to me
really
is
sick stuff.
insane. You have to look at these stories objectively. You can't just look at one side and just blanketly criticize one side without looking at what can be done now. Last thing here, as there is more information coming out around the chemicals that were released. This is
The beginning of the
today,
rise of the Antichrist.
A local news report here. Let me share a bit of this.
We now know 3 more chemicals that were on board the Norfolk Southern train that derailed here in East Palestine just over a week ago. And we're being told that some of those chemicals are dangerous.
We basically nuked a town with chemicals so we could get a railroad open.
The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency sent a letter to Norfolk Southern stating that ethylene glycol monobutyl
So let me explain something to you.
ethylexyl-acrylate, and isobutylene were also in the rail cars that were derailed, breached, or on fire. Caggiano says ethylexyl-acrylate is especially worrisome. He says it's a carcinogen, and contact with it can cause burning and irritation in the skin and eyes. Breathing it in can irritate the nose, throat, and cause coughing and shortness of breath. Isobutylene is also known to cause dizziness and drowsiness when inhaled.
I was kind of surprised that when they quickly told the people they can go back home, but then said if they feel like they want their homes tested, they can have them tested. I would have far rather they did all the testing.
Caggiano says it's possible some of these chemicals could still be present in homes and on objects until you clean them thoroughly.
So there's a lot of what ifs, and we're going to be looking at this thing 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line and wondering, gee, cancer clusters could pop up.
That is some
well
really
water
sick
could go
stuff.
bad.
Caggiano recommends anyone who's in the East Palestine area get a health checkup. He says get a record now of where your health stands so that moving forward you'll have documentation of any possibly related effects to the train derailment.
That is so fucked
in East
up.
Palestine, Jennifer Rodriguez, WKBN 27 First News.
That last piece of advice I think is fantastic. If you are in the area, absolutely get a health checkup. Ensure there is a record of where your health is now. That way, if there is any impact of these chemicals on your health going into the future, you have that record of it. The only thing this piece misses, and this is local news generally, is the actual connecting to a failure in policy and who to blame in terms of administrations, in terms of these companies and their lack of safety around it, their total lack of consideration for actual people. All local news, unfortunately, lacks that extra step. But this is why it's important to support places like The Lever and ensure reporting like this, investigative reporting like this, continues, and that there is someone holding these companies and these administrations accountable. So this also goes to, I have a hard time imagining that anything will actually get done here, that Pete Buttigieg and the Biden administration will actually move to enact any of these rules.
Yeah, I hope
unless
they
there
do
is some
something,
real
man,
pressure put in
'cause-
place by mainstream media outlets. So occasionally you have a story like
This is really fucking scary, because if you think about this, like...
So let me explain something to you.
This has been happening for a really, like, this happens all the time. Like, I think 2 to 4 trains derail every day, I think. Right? And the only reason why this is getting a lot of coverage now is because this one was really bad. And it's so blatant, the corruption that these companies are doing, right? Because, like, they're basically... This company had, a million workers. They cut it down to 200,000. So now they have less workers, right? They're trying to load the trains up with as many carts as possible, so that they can make as much money, right? So it's a super heavy loaded train. There's like 2 dudes on it, right? I heard they get like 19 seconds to inspect the whole train. It used to be 3 minutes or something like that. Don't quote me, but it's like not a long time to check everything. So they're making a ton of profit. But think of all those downsides, because they have less people, super loaded train, super unsafe, it's heavy. They don't get a lot of time to inspect, all for more money. They don't pay the people more. The people gotta work more, get paid like the same amount or less. But the corporation makes more money. And stuff like this fucking happens. And now the town needs to clean up all the chemicals. Our taxpayer money needs to go to clean that shit up, right? The corporation gave every person in the town $5. There's 5,000 people in the town. That's $25,000. That's nothing. $5 per person. They need to sue the shit out of that company, and they need to regulate it and make them force them to upgrade their brakes, because that's fucking ridiculous. We should not be using technology from the fucking Civil War. All right, that's really fucked up.
So let me explain something to you. So let me explain something to you.
If I was the president, I would have corporate police. I would have police that monitor corporations and rich fucks.
So let me explain something to you.
That's what I would do, and that's how you solve this problem, God damn it. All right, let's move on to the next topic. I wanted to watch this. This is really funny. The Daily Show, they made a really good edit. Now, when I hear the word woke, right? When you hear the word woke, what do you think about? Because I'm a big fan of George Carlin, and he was super fucking woke. Okay, if you listen to his comedy, he was anti-capitalist. He was still a capitalist. He was like a social, I would say social democrat, democratic socialist. But he still liked capitalism, but he did criticize it, and he shit on people on top. Not only that, he would also shit on the government for being corrupt and not good, and we're not doing good things when they could do the good things, you know? And that's what I would consider woke. You shit on the powerful. There's one thing George Carlin said once in one of his specials. He said, it's called the American Dream because you got to be asleep to believe it. And that is so fucking true. And so when I hear woke, that's what I think. I'm like, oh, this person is, you know, they have awoken, they know about, you know, they're very smart, you know, they went to school or something, they know about science and shit, they know about, you know, the genders and sociology and philosophy and shit, and they're not just like, you know what I mean, like they're open-minded. They're open-minded. But anyways, there are people that use the word woke to like encompass any bad thing that they don't like. So like they'll see a gay person that's like, oh, that's woke. They'll see a trans person, oh, that's woke. You know, they'll see they're teaching MLK, they're teaching Black history. Oh, that's woke. Ah! It's like, dude, what the fuck? Like they ruined the whole word, so now I can't even use that word anymore. I gotta make up my own word. But the Daily Show made a really funny video. It's like The Last of Us cut, intermixed with just stupid Fox News shit.
An incurable brain virus that's infected our country's entire leadership class. It started in the universities. Now it's infected our corporations. This infects every major sector of society.
Dad?
They are suffering from an incurable brain disease called
The woke mind virus has infected a lot of institutions.
The woke mind virus will go down as more dangerous than the Wuhan lab virus leak.
The Wuhan?
Saying it's a virus, some kind of parasite.
They've all been infected by the woke virus that has emasculated their brain.
Oh, the woke virus!
Saying it's mostly people in the city.
Tons of woke
Not the woke virus!
Coalesced in those cities, and they have destroyed them.
We should get moving.
This woke sickness is already spread throughout our society. M&M's going woke.
No, the M&M's.
Mr. Potato Head.
Mr. Potato Head.
American Girl dolls are going woke.
No, My Little Pony.
Xbox has also announced they're going woke too.
Goddamn Xbox. That's why I like PS4.
Microsoft Word is going woke.
The military may be going woke again.
It is everywhere you look. I don't think I've seen anything spread so fast in my life.
It's everywhere. There's nowhere to go.
United Airlines wants to get a little bit more woke. Race and gender are irrelevant to who flies your airplane. Once you forget that, airplanes tend to crash.
That's what the woke mob is trying to do. Silence opposition.
Silence our speech. They bully the population into silence.
It's so fucking stupid, bro. Oh, God. That was really funny. I like that. It's woke. Oh, it's like they literally act like they use the word woke so much, and they say it like if it's a fucking virus that's literally spreading. It's really funny.
What a pervert. So let me explain something to you. So let me explain something to you.
That is some really sick stuff. Porn can lead to demonic possession.
Did you guys know that?
The news and the left promotes pedophilia. The news and the left promotes pedophilia.
The wind burned her a little bit in the pool.
The wind burned her a little bit in the pool. What the fuck?
Oh my God, we're gonna arrest you! Oh my God, we're gonna arrest you!
All right, let's keep going. Now we're gonna watch. The Supreme Court could destroy YouTube, and we don't want that, do we?
Marking June 30th.
I don't think so.
You know, basically the RIP internet date that I'm going to have a little headstone card for.
The Humanist Report, and the last guy was the Rational
You
National.
just heard from Dr. Eric
love both of
Goldman
them.
from the Santa Clara University School of Law, and that's what he said in an interview with Philip DeFranco. This man is an expert on Section 230, and we all just heard his grim prognosis. If the Supreme Court does indeed choose to alter or repeal Section 230, the internet as we know it would cease to exist. It would still exist, but it would be an entirely different place, and he's not the only one who's sounding the alarm. For example, Vox writer Ian Millhiser says that the Supreme Court could ruin the internet with the two cases that it's set to hear this week, Gonzalez v. Google and Twitter v. Tamna. Now, on top of those two cases, the Supreme Court is expected to take up two additional cases that are coming out of Florida and Texas.
Hello?
And those cases could also yield
Can you guys
similar
hear me?
outcomes. So we're looking at 4 different Supreme Court cases potentially
Hello?
that all could be disastrous for the internet. And the odds of the internet winning here, according to Goldman, is very low.
This is like a package of bad ideas. It's not just one bad idea. There's a lot going on there. In other words, for the internet to look like it does today, we have to win all 4 of those cases perfectly. And those are really long
Hello?
odds that make me very, very
Yeah!
Bleak. Very bleak. Now, I'll link you to his full interview with Philip DeFranco. I would highly recommend that you watch it. It was fascinating, albeit terrifying. But in order to understand why these cases are so monumental, you have to understand what's at stake with Section 230 and why it's important. Now, back in October of last year, when we heard that the Supreme Court would be taking up these cases, I initially sounded the alarm, and this was my explanation about Section 230 and arguments for and against it. Nobody really knows what the true takeaway would be in the event the Supreme Court struck down Section 230. We've heard a lot about this. We've heard critiques about Section 230 from the left and the right, and the implications of its demise aren't really known, but one thing that is for sure is that it would radically change the internet. And odds are it would be changed for the worse as opposed to the better. So what exactly is the Supreme Court looking at? Well, Mike Babirnez of Yahoo News explains the Supreme Court this week announced it will take up a pair of cases that could fundamentally change the legal foundations of the internet. Both cases ask justices to consider how far protections that shield websites and social media companies from legal liability over what users post to their platform should go. Those
I'm trying to
protections were
use
created
a
in
voice
portion
changer,
of the
guys.
Communications
It's not
Decency
working,
Act
though.
of 1996, known as Section 230, a provision that has been called the 26 words that created the internet. Section 230 did 2 crucial things. It established that companies operating websites or social media platforms could not be held legally responsible if their users post content that breaks the law. It also granted them the right to curate, edit, and delete user content as they see fit. So suffice to say, the internet in its current state exists specifically because of Section 230. Without Section 230, the internet might look like a very different place. Now, as I alluded to earlier,
Hello?
both Democrats and
Hello?
Republicans
Hello?
have critiqued Section 230, even though Donald Trump has been particularly vocal in his criticism. But the Democrats who oppose Section 230 claim that websites should be held more culpable if violent extremism is festering on their website, if the proliferation of misinformation on their website continues. Whereas Republicans don't like the second provision of Section 230, specifically the one that gives social media websites the power to delete and curate content. They don't like that because they claim that these websites all have a liberal bias and it leads to the censorship of conservatives. Now, that critique also get banned from social media websites frequently as well. They just don't whine about it as much. But conservatives in particular, they get a ton of traction on websites like Facebook, where the left just isn't able to compete. And they also dominate YouTube as well, although I don't have data to back that up. But just for argument's sake, you can see that there are different arguments against Section 230. Democrats are against one portion of Section 230, and conservatives are against another portion of Section 230. There's two sections of 230, and there's reasons for both sides to be against it, at least what we've heard. Now, both of the cases that the Supreme Court has taken up, they have to do with families who are suing these tech giants, Twitter and Google in particular, because a member of these families fell victim to extremists. Now, the families are arguing in these lawsuits that websites should be held legally liable if extremism proliferates on their platforms and they don't take action to stop it. You could read more about this on the SCOTUS blog post about this. Now, the Supreme Court could go either way. They could side with the families and claim, yes, these websites, these tech giants in particular, should have done more to prevent extremism that led to the deaths of these families' victims. And they can also take it in a different direction. They can say, well, actually, there's already too much content moderation, or they could just strike down Section 230 altogether. The question is, what does that mean for the internet going forward? And really, nobody really knows. All we can do is speculate, but odds are it would mean less freedom on the internet if the Supreme Court in any way decided to take on Section 230 and declare it unconstitutional, either fully or partially. Many communications law experts fear that a decision throwing out Section 230 would create chaos in one of the world's most important industries as companies attempt to quickly react to a sudden and drastic change to the legal landscape. They argue that because few companies would be able to endure the new financial risk of lawsuits over user-generated posts, venues for free speech online would rapidly erode or even disappear. Other sites might go the opposite direction and eschew moderation altogether, which would create space for their platforms to turn into cesspools of objectionable content. Kyle Barr of Gizmodo states, if a company like Twitter suddenly finds that it is held liable for each post on its site, the company says that its options would become limited to either folding entirely or conducting extreme amounts of vetting and content moderation, much more than already goes on. This, of course, isn't exactly what conservatives want, or it's at least what they claim that they don't want. So envision that being the product, the end result of the Supreme Court ruling with regard to Section 230. What does this mean for independent media, YouTube shows like my own?
What?
Could independent media exist in a post-Section 230 America? I genuinely don't know. Or if it does exist, would it exist in a different fashion? Would this force YouTube to hire content creators, for example, so that way they're not just independent contractors, so that way they have more direct control over what we as YouTubers say? Would Twitter take up a lot more bans? It's so hard to say, and it's horrifying to think about the implications of what this would look like. But as the article alluded to, it could go in the opposite direction as well, which wouldn't necessarily be ideal. For example, David Ingram of NBC News explains, alternatively, the court could also create a situation in which
I ordered a
companies
cable
have
for a
little power
microphone.
to moderate what users post, rolling back years of efforts to limit the reach of misinformation, abuse, and hate speech. So what would that look like in reality? Well, in the event a user, for example, makes a death threat online to a politician, that would disempower websites like Twitter or YouTube from suspending that user. They would have to allow the extremism to go on to that website. They would be unable to do anything about that. It would be in the hands of the local police department where that individual made that complaint. Does that sound like a really good
have a focus
alternative
rate
as well? To give them no tools whatsoever to get rid of violence and extremism? So YouTube would not be able to remove an ISIS beheading video? I mean, do you understand how both extremes, when it comes to Section 230, they don't provide a better alternative to the internet today? So the problem is that there's a lot of uncertainty. We don't know what the internet would look like without Section 230. The internet as it exists today, in its form currently, is the result of Section 230. Now, we can only speculate about what the internet would look like. But Dr. Goldman, in his interview with Philip
I want to try to
DeFranco,
put this on,
kind
but
of
I don't
gave
want
us
to
some
like
scenarios,
have my whole
and
stream
all of
like
these
fucked
scenarios
over
are
by one
genuinely
new
disturbing.
mic.
It would radically transform social media, including YouTube. And what he said was genuinely chilling.
One possible conclusion is that the court will say if the services take efforts to promote user content, they lose Section 230. They can still host it, they can still gather it, but if they do anything to promote it, they will no longer have this legal shield. And in a situation like that, then the internet starts to look a lot more like Google Drive or Dropbox, where people upload content, there's a hosting function, the services give them a URL, and then we all have to do our own work in order to get an audience for our content. That would just change the internet at its very core, how we think about the internet.
And actually, to illustrate exactly how bad this could be, Goldman gave us a helpful example of what the world would look like on our own platform here.
So one likely scenario is that YouTube would scale back any recommendations at all. It would simply reduce the ability of users to find the content that they think is relevant.
They're going to ruin the
harder for
internet,
them to do
guys.
so. That's not
Please
really a good
subscribe to my
business
channel.
experience for the users of YouTube. One other possibility is that YouTube could say, instead of reducing recommendations, they'll keep doing recommendations like they have in the past. They'll just constrain the number of people who are allowed to publish on YouTube in the first place.
But the people who would be allowed to publish are only those who YouTube decides are not legally risky, right? And obviously only a small percentage of creators would get that privilege, and everyone else would kind of just get kicked off the service.
From that perspective, one likely scenario of any change to Section 230 here is that we're going to see, quote, the rich get richer. The people who already have audiences and already have power in the marketplace of ideas, they're going to continue to get the same
Oh my
kind of
God!
treatment
So
that
Ben
they've got in the
Shapiro,
past. It's
Daily
everyone
Wire,
else, the
Steven
small
Crowder,
players, the
all
people
these
who
people are
could
gonna keep
become big
growing.
influencers
Everyone
in the
else gonna get
future,
fucked.
but haven't gone that far yet. They may never get that chance because the doors will be closed to them.
But also, with all this, let's be clear. This isn't just something that's going to apply to Google and YouTube. This would impact all social media companies that host third-party content and are currently protected by Section 230.
So, needless to say, the stakes are sky high, and the fate of the internet is in the hands of a group of far-right, tech-illiterate geriatrics who may not even know the weight of their decision here. I mean, think about that situation. As much as we all gripe about algorithms, and there is cause for frustration with them, without algorithms, to see YouTube turn into Dropbox, to where our content cannot be distributed to anyone, unless, of course, you're a large multinational corporation. I mean, all of us, like that, lose our voices on the internet. This is more monumental than net neutrality being repealed, in my opinion. But the difference is that we're powerless here because we have no influence whatsoever over the Supreme Court. We're just sitting here crossing our fingers and hope that they don't make a catastrophic decision that equally affects everyone on the left, on the right. This should be a nonpartisan issue. But as I explained initially back in October, both sides take issue with Section 230, but they haven't presented alternatives that would make the situation any better. I think that there is important ways that we can rein in big tech with antitrust laws by forcing these social media giants to be transparent with their algorithms. But to do anything with regard to Section 230, repeal it, chip away at it, that is something that I don't want to test out. I don't want to see what the internet will look like.
Yeah, they're
Because
gonna fuck up the internet,
That means
guys.
independent media is gone. Activists and journalists
We need to
who
stand together,
get their
protect this.
work out will be no longer able to practice independently. They'd have to be part of some corporation like NBC or the New York Times. Anti-establishment voices could be snuffed out as a result of this case. And I don't think anybody really understands the gravity of this situation. So we don't know the outcome. We'll get a sense as to what way the Supreme Court is going to rule, hopefully, in the next week when they hear this case. But either way, brace for impact, because if they do anything to Section 230 and don't leave it intact as it is,
That's
it could
literally
be
the Supreme Court.
absolutely disastrous with a ripple effect that is going to span across the entire internet. And it's just horrifying to think about. So you've been warned.
That's what the Supreme Court is gonna be playing when they get rid of fucking Section 230. They're gonna be like, and I'm gonna be like,
And it makes me cry to even look at them.
so please, guys, call your local representatives and tell them to fuck off and don't replace Section 230. Don't get rid of it, okay? Tell them, no, local person, I will not vote for you if you don't support Section 230. And then you play your banjo. And then you're like,
Abolish the police.
And it makes me cry. And it makes me cry to even look at them.
all right, let's move on. Here is Ron DeSantis gets caught a groomer by Trump.
Donald Trump, shockingly, on Truth Social, praised some of Biden's speech. Did not see that coming. Did not see that coming at all. And one of the other things he did on the same day is start going after DeSantis.
There we go. Hopefully
in a
that's
personal way.
Good.
So previously, I want to say it was more political than personal, right? Like he calls him Ron DeSanctimonious, says, "You wouldn't be anywhere if it wasn't for me. You had to beg for my endorsement like a dog. There were tears rolling down his face as he asked for my endorsement." And then it was some COVID stuff. He went after him. Like, okay, you guys have seen the shots that he's taken it. Ron DeSanctimonious. Well, now we got this one. Trump going heavy on the DeSantis is a pedophile stuff today. What?
Oh.
Okay, let's see. Let's see.
Make pee-pee.
So this is again.
It is
That's
disgusting.
Not Ron, is it? He would never do such a thing. And then you see a picture here.
Holy
Here's
shit.
Ron DeSanctimonious grooming high school girls with alcohol as a teacher. You see.
Yo, so he's a teacher, and he's like in a party with multiple younger like students. Oh,
he was 23 years.
Too bad Republicans don't care about this, and like they're actually like, oh yeah, good job, bro. If I was her, oh bro, if I was him, man, I'd be. That's literally Republicans.
Years old at the time. He's surrounded by these young girls. I do not know their age, but I will say this. Whether he was a high school professor or assistant teacher or whatever, or a college professor or college assistant.
Perverts. Perverts. Perverts.
Yikesy.
That is my own sperm.
Yikesy, right? Like, weird.
These people are perverts.
Ron, I wouldn't be doing this, Ron. I wouldn't be doing this, Ron.
What a pervert.
So this is not the only one he did.
What a pervert.
The other one.
What a
Ron
pervert.
DeSantis was having a drink party with his students when he was a high school teacher, having drinks with underage girls and cuddling with them. Certainly look pretty gross
Perverts.
and ephebophilia-esque. Oh, come on. Okay, come on. I hate it when people try to use... I'm going to use this word to make me look really smart, and then, like, it's going to be...
That is my own
anybody
sperm.
Who's reading it to pronounce it. Like, just say the thing simply. Anyway, there's Ron, there's the girls. Trump goes, no way? No way.
No way.
Oh man,
You know,
So,
bro. You
oh
literally hung out
boy,
with Jeffrey
the
Epstein.
2024 primary is in full effect, and Trump is back to his old Trump stuff.
Gotta
You know what
find
this
my other
reminds me
vape,
of?
guys.
This reminds me of when he was fighting with Ted Cruz, and he started implying and sometimes flat out saying that Ted Cruz's dad killed JFK. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
He also retweeted something where he was like, it said like, I wouldn't spill the beans on Ted's wife.
I don't know where I put
And
my
you know,
vape,
Trump
my
like
other one.
retweeted that, and basically it was a way of saying like,
We lost one.
I wouldn't even F Ted Cruz's wife. And there was a comparison between Melania and Ted's wife was not looking great in the picture. They
Oh, I
like the
found
least
it.
flattering picture of her ever, and it was Melania looking good. So Trump was going after the looks of Ted Cruz's wife. I mean, the guy, there's no bottom. Now, sometimes his sort of insane attacks
Perverts.
were based, I'm not going to lie. Like when they were doing a debate, I think it was in South Carolina, very big military state, and Jeb Bush was like,
Hey guys, so like I ordered some what are they called? Patches, like a patch. I bought a beret, like my little character, so I can wear on stream. And I bought some patches, so I bought this patch. I don't know if you guys can see it. Let me pull up. So I bought this patch, which I thought was really cool. which I'm gonna stick onto the hat. I also got this one right here. I guess it's Velcro or. Anyways, I got this one. I want to stick on something. No step on snake. It's just making fun of the Gatson flag or whatever the hell it's called. Gatson? I don't know. Get the point.
You know, my brother kept us safe. My brother kept us safe.
What a pervert.
And Trump was like, the towers came down on your brother's watch. That is not keeping us safe. I remember watching that like, oh,
take the towers down now.
After Trump was like, you see that? You see that? That's all Jeb Bush's donors. That's all the lobbyists and the donors for Jeb. And I was like, goddamn, if the polls show this guy wins this debate, it's over. And that was kind of early on in the process, right? So sometimes his like unhinged attacks were based, and other times they were just genuinely unhinged and low blows and crazy. Now this one here, what category do I put this in? We're gonna go half and half with this, right? Semi-fair, semi-unfair, okay? Because I mean, parts of the story are true, right? Ron DeSantis shouldn't have done that. So kind of creepy, kind of yikesy. Don't do it, Ron. Don't do it. But the reason I say it's semi-fair, it's also not political by its nature. It's more personal stuff. Now, in this instance, like I said, it's personal, but something voters maybe should know, right? That he's a creeper. But it's only semi-fair. Why? Jeffrey Epstein introduced 14-year-old victim to Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Ghislaine Maxwell trial testimony reveals.
Ha!
Oh.
Wow.
Oh, okay. So, whatever you do, don't go to Google Images and type in Trump Epstein and see all of the pictures that pop up when you do that.
Perverts.
What a pervert.
Do that.
Perverts.
I wouldn't
These
do
people
that.
are
I
perverts.
wouldn't look at all these pictures of Trump and Epstein.
The news
like,
and
how
the
they hang
left
out
promotes
and stuff,
pedophilia.
and how they
The
clearly love each
news
other.
and the left promotes
I
pedophilia.
definitely wouldn't do that. I wouldn't look up how many times he's been on the Lolita Express. I wouldn't. Now Trump loves to do the thing like, act like I wasn't even that close with him, bro. I don't even know. Whatever.
I was like a
I don't
spy. I was a
even-
double
he's
agent
nobody and stuff.
working against Jeffrey
Nonsense.
Epstein, bro.
And I love the Republicans who are really into like the Epstein stuff, but they only bring up Bill Clinton. Look, here's the reality. Clinton, guilty. He was doing some messed up stuff. There's a lot of public intellectuals and celebrities. Like Chris Tucker was on the Lolita Express. So was Donald Trump. And he's openly talked about, like, Jeffrey, you know this guy, he really likes him young. He really likes him young. And also, look, you're going to go after DeSantis over that picture. Now, that picture is definitely creepy. He shouldn't have been at that place. Do we have any further facts about what happened, though? We don't know. Now, again, he shouldn't have been there, but is there specific evidence of some Me Too type thing with Ron DeSantis? Maybe, maybe not. It hasn't come out yet if there is. In the case of Trump, the 26 women,
Damn.
26 women who accused Trump of sexual misconduct. Some of the charges are as extreme as rape. And of course, we have Trump on tape, the Access Hollywood tape, very famous tape, came out just before the election, where he talks about how I grab him by the pussy. I don't even wait. When they're a celebrity, they let you do whatever you want with them. Again, the part of that was the gross
Disgusting
part.
and
I think
probably
everybody focused
illegal.
on the wrong part of it, the like grab him by the pussy part. That's the part everybody was like, grossed out by. But the worst part of it was, quote, I don't even wait.
Disgusting and
What?
probably
You're
illegal.
not waiting for what?
Consent.
You're not waiting for consent. You're not waiting for the yes.
I may
let's
just
do
never
this.
come back.
So, the thing that's amazing about Trump, they need to study this guy. The thing that's amazing is he seems to be unaware that hypocrisy as a concept exists. That, like, you can be guilty of the thing you're accusing somebody else of being guilty of, and in this instance, perhaps even way worse, right? We have DeSantis at that party. Creepy, wrong, bad, don't do it. But we don't have any further evidence as to what went down. Whereas with Trump,
I really want to try
26
this new
By the way,
mic.
I don't even know if this is the final number. This number's all the way from
I really
2020.
do,
This number
guys.
could have went up to 40 or whatever. He could be in Bill Cosby territory with the number of women saying, hey, this guy did something creepy with me, right? So it's just hilarious. Now, by the way, the Trump people on Twitter and Truth Social and the DeSantis people on Twitter and Truth Social
I just hope it's not
ripping
too
each
hard
other
to
to
install,
shreds
you know?
over this, bro. Big name right-wing figures like Ian Miles Chong and Cat Turd. I know, if you're not as online as I have to be for my show, you're like, who? What? Like, who the hell are you talking about? Just know, two very big right-wing Twitter accounts and figures are just going for the jugular with each other now, where they're, somebody's defending DeSantis and protecting DeSantis, and the other one is going after DeSantis and defending Trump, and they're just like, it's a fight that we've seen previously on the left. You see it all the time on the left. I'm the most pure and uncorrupt. No, I'm the most pure and uncorrupted. No, I'm the only truth teller. No, I'm the only truth teller. Now you're seeing that on the right, and it's over this fight between Trump people and DeSantis people, and man, I'm here for it. Guys, DeSantis is very likely going to run. There was a story that came out the other day. He's already got a pack ready and whatnot. So we're going to see, we might actually see
Jesus Christ.
Donald Trump versus Ron DeSantis on the debate stage. And you're going to see stuff like this come up. And it is going to be glorious. Oh, I can't wait. Oh,
No.
Oh, it's going to be the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
No.
My veins, bro. Inject it right into my veins. So anyway, there you have it. All right, that is the show, y'all.
All righty, boy. Thank you, Kyle. I love you so much, dude. I've been watching you since, like, Trump ran. You really hooked me on to the left, and I appreciate you for that. I'm eating Doritos. They're really good. Anyways, guys. Fuck Ron DeSantis. He probably is a groomer. Fuck Trump. He's a rapist. Let's move on.
So one of the things we've seen a lot of...
This is Republicans defend child marriage. They're defending child marriage. Republicans, these fucking gross fucks. Jesus Christ, man. That's why I hate religion. I hate religion. Overall, like everything. It's just fucking gross. It tricks people doing the weirdest shit.
In the past couple months is the right going all in with this narrative that LGBTQ people, and specifically LGBTQ teachers, are groomers. And they're trying to sexualize our young kids and indoctrinate them into gender ideology, which is...
Remember, we just watched a video about Ron DeSantis hanging out with younger people, giving them alcohol and shit, being weird.
To confuse them about whether, if you're a boy, are you really a boy? If you're a girl, are you really a girl? And, the argument is this is on purpose, it's top down, and it's confusing them. It's forcing them to have a left-wing ideology. This is something we've heard a lot of. And you have Twitter accounts like Libs of TikTok, for example. They'll look all over TikTok and try to find examples of some weird pink-haired teacher in some school district that, said some questionable thing.
No.
Questionable thing, and then they use that to extrapolate to all teachers, or certainly all LGBTQ teachers. And there's this real, moral panic and hysteria going on right now. Now, remember when Matt Walsh was on Joe Rogan's show, he said of kids are on, hormone therapy because they're, trans or whatever. And then they looked it up and the number was 4,000 or 5,000 kids. Just nowhere near, just way overestimating, what they think is a...
That's in the Bible!
The whole groomer discourse has been sketchy to say the least. Well, guess what? We just got some new information coming out of Wyoming.
Yo, trans people be like...
General Kenobi!
Which flips that whole groomer narrative right on its head. Efforts to raise the age of marriage to 16 in Wyoming have stalled. Let me repeat that. Efforts to raise the age of marriage to 16 in Wyoming have stalled as the Wyoming GOP is urging its constituents to oppose a bill to add a minimum age. Not because the bill is too weak, but because the bill stood to rob their constituents of constitutional rights to marry a child. Wow. So all this talk of the LGBTQ groomers, bro, we got to protect our kids, bro. Protect them to what? to marry them off at the age of 14? Apparently, yes. That's what they want to do. All right, so we have this video here. Let's play it.
So the first bill for our consideration is House Bill 7. Reading clerk will read. Please read it in.
House Bill 7 engrossed underage marriage amendments.
Raging is they wanted to raise the legal marriage age to 16.
I'd ask the body to resist this change and vote no on the bill. There are communities such as our Amish, Hutterites, and Mennonites here in Wyoming that would be in violation.
Who fucking cares? PA don't be doing that shit. Or do they? It should be illegal. You can't do that, man. If you need to be 18 to drink, no, 21 now to drink. If you need to be 18 to go into the fucking military, right? 18 to vote. 18 to do all this shit. You have to be 18 and get married. Point blank done. Nothing else. That's bullshit. These are some fucking weird perverts.
Violation of this law if it was to pass.
Fucking weirdos,
so because
dude.
They have the Amish and the Mennonites, these sort of fringe religious groups that live a certain way. They're like, well, we don't want to offend them. We don't want to offend their culture. You know, they're in violation of it.
These people are perverts.
No, but it is right.
What a pervert.
It is right. They shouldn't be doing child marriage stuff. Why all of a sudden when it comes to like religions, Republicans are like, oh, well, they say religious liberty, bro, so it is what it is. Okay, stretch that argument to its logical conclusion. If a religion was still doing ritual human sacrifice,
yeah,
you'd be like, hey,
exactly.
murder in this instance is not really murder.
Like, yeah, it's all right,
so
guys.
We're going to go ahead and let it slide. What if somebody says it's part of my religion to I was going to say sexually assault kids, but that is kind of what they're in favor of here, right? If you're being forced to marry at 15 or whatever,
yeah,
you're signing them up for abuse. Wow, this is low. They say the bill would also require anyone under the age of 18
it's fucking disgusting,
seeking
dude.
to get married. Let's see what else. To receive written consent from their parents under the eye of a witness.
15 to 12. House Bill 7 has
The bill has already passed the Republican-controlled House, so the House it passed.
passed the Committee of the Whole.
The proposal to impose an age of marriage of 16 was favorable with some Republicans in the state. Good, glad some are on the right side, leading to the first real momentum the bill has seen in some time. Wyoming is one of 8 states in the country without a minimum age requirement for marriage. What?
Wow.
There are 8 states that allow child marriage. Jesus Christ. Ranks among the top 10 states in the country for child marriage. Okay. So they go on to say here, the party emailed materials to constituents from Wyoming Family Watch, a religious lobbying group organized by a conservative pastor in the state, arguing that preventing child marriage under 16 from preventing children under the age of 16 from marrying denies the fundamental purpose of marriage. Currently, the state allows marriage licenses to become a get-out-of-jail-free card for kids in a legal quandary they can't escape as it enters a minor into a marriage before they're old enough to bring
That's what right-wingers think.
This stuff is dark, bro. This stuff is dark. So in Newsweek, they wrote about this. Wyoming limiting child marriage sparks Republican outrage. Now, again, some Republicans are on the right side, but there are many who are not. The Wyoming Republican Party is seeking to kill a bill working its way through the state legislature proposing to raise the state's legal marriage age to 16, arguing that putting arbitrary limits on child marriage interferes with parental rights and religious liberty.
Freedom!
So if it's an LGBTQ teacher
you can French kiss the guy next to you.
Marriage or teach that trans people exist. Stop it, you're sexualizing our kids. This is not okay. Protect the kids. But if it's a 14-year-old religious person in Wyoming trying to marry off their kid to an adult, it's, bro, don't put arbitrary style. Let them live the way they want to live, bro. What happened to protecting the kids?
Freedom!
At the same time, this is a very important fact to bring up. They're screaming about protecting kids. You have a number of Republican states around the country trying to bring back child labor.
That is so fucked up. They want to bring back child labor, dude. That last time we had child labor was around World War One. Why are Republicans obsessed with literally World War One era shit? Like FDR, didn't he ban child labor? FDR, because kids would literally have to go in the big machines and clean them and shit, and like they'll get their arms chopped off and their fucking heads crushed. Fuck Republicans, bro. Listen, the people are fine. If you're a Republican citizen, it's okay. Unless you're a racist fuck. But the politicians are dicks.
So they want to protect kids from LGBTQ
That's
indoctrination,
so mean.
aka learning about gay marriage or learning that trans people exist. Protect them from that so you can be sent to the mine or married to some religious creepy weirdo. That's good. The bill, which already passed the Republican-controlled Wyoming House of Representatives on a 36-25 vote last month, 25 voted against it, proposes banning state residents from marrying anyone under the age of 16 while requiring anyone under the age of 18 seeking to get married to receive written consent from their parents under the eye of a competent witness. The debate has been a long-standing one in Wyoming. Good. That's good. It's good. You know, instead of the conversations we should be having are like, let's give everybody health care, let's stop bombing so many countries, let's do sectoral bargaining so workers could get higher wages, let's lower prescription drug prices. No, in Wyoming, they're like, me want marry 13-year-old. And that's a debate. It's a hot debate going on right now. Currently, Wyoming is one of just 8 states in the country, including California, Michigan, Mississippi, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Washington, and West Virginia, without a minimum age requirement for marriage. And it currently ranks among the top 10 states in the country for child marriages, according to a 2021 study by advocacy group Unchained at Last. Freedom! Efforts to raise the age of marriage in the state have consistently stalled. For years, now retired Laramie Democratic Representative Charles Pelkey.
So in this state, the Democrats and like some other people are like, they're like, guys, we need to raise the age of consent or the age of marriage. We need to raise it. And they've been trying to raise it. They've been putting bills forward. Oh, let's raise it to 16. Let's raise it to 18. Let's raise it. And these sick effers keep fucking rejecting it. Because they say, freedom! Freedom!
Sponsored legislation to
freedom
raise
to be
the
a
age
pervert,
of marriage
bro.
to 18,
a
only to fail with
PDF
every effort.
Filed.
Wow. So look, this guy should be a right-wing hero. Because they care so much about protecting kids in the national discourse, all these conservatives, and here you have a Democratic representative who kept fighting to raise it to 18. It's also a common practice across the country even now. While the number of child marriages nationally has been in a steady free fall over the last few decades, well, that's good. Just 7 states to date have voted to ban it entirely, even as countries like the Philippines pass national laws banning the practice. That's good. That's good. Other states like Tennessee have actually sought to go in the opposite direction, with Republicans there seeking last year to eliminate any limits on marriage entirely until public outrage forced them to reverse course.
Huh?
Wow. This reminds me, remember, Matt Walsh, who sees a trans groomer behind every door, he said on his radio show years ago that he thinks it's perfectly normal for like a 16-year-old or 17-year-old girl. It's like, hey, that's when they're most fertile. They should get married at that age. So the guy who wants to protect kids is actually
yeah,
super sketchy on the issue of protecting kids.
They're literally
this year, however,
they're just projecting. They care so much about kids. Meanwhile, they're actually the ones that want to fucking destroy kids, dude. I fucking hate these people. They're so evil. They're literally Sith. I'm a Jedi right now. They are Sith.
Proposal in Wyoming to impose an age floor of 16 has found favor
Disgusting and
with
probably
some
illegal.
Republicans in the state, leading to the first real momentum the bill has seen in some time. Earlier this week, the Wyoming Senate voted up the bill on first reading, leaving it just 2 more votes before it would ultimately head to Governor Mark Gordon's desk.
I may just never come back.
Do-nothing bill. According to Unchained at Last, an anti-child marriage advocacy group, approximately 97% of child marriages in Wyoming are to girls aged 16 and 17, meaning it would likely impact only a small number of children.
What a pervert.
It's really great the legislators want to protect 3% of those who are impacted by
You're
climate
hurting the kids.
So in other words, the guy kept proposing 18, 18, 18, and they go, that's too high. They drop it to 16, and they're like, okay, maybe. And the reason they're doing 97% of them are 16 or 17. And so they're like, yeah, maybe if 14, 13, that's questionable, but 16 is fine.
You're hurting the kids.
Look, I actually think, here's my hot, spicy take at the end of this this story. I actually do think it's a fair debate what the line is for everything, right? I've advocated for a long time. I do think
You're hurting the kids.
16 and up should be the case for, you know, tobacco, alcohol. Now alcohol's 21. It used to be, I think, 18. Now it's 21. Voting, go into the military. I understand. I think there's reasonable debate between people anywhere from age 16 to age like 20, 21 or 22, right? That range is somewhere in there. You should draw the line and draw a clean line, and everything above that you allow. So I actually think 16 and up is fair, but it is kind of concerning that we're talking about no limits in 8 states. None. No limits at all.
You're hurting the kids.
I never would have guessed that was already the law in 8 states. I would have said whatever the age of consent.
You are morally obligated to.
Consent is when you're allowed to get married, right? So a lot of states it's 18, a lot of states it's 17, a lot of states it's 16. Wouldn't that be the default assumption? Like, hey, whenever you can legally consent to sexual activities is when you can legally consent to marry. But apparently no. The age of consent for sexual activity and the consent for marriage is totally different. You have some states with no.
You have a mental health problem.
Well, that's crazy. So it wouldn't even be legal if it was like it wouldn't be illegal if it was like a 12-year-old or like an 8-year-old, or that wouldn't be illegal in some states. That's wild. That's wild. So
yeah,
anyway,
that's creepy.
Kind of crazy. We're still having this debate in 2023, but here we are. If
You have a mental health problem. You have a mental health problem. You are morally obligated. You have a mental health problem.
You're kind of like a snotty face, bitch.
All right, folks, let's move on to the next topic. Turkey, Syrian earthquake.
There was an absolutely horrific earthquake that hit Turkey and Syria the other day, and it is a dire scenario. So we're going to get to the specifics in a second. I'll show you a video. But as of this recording,
let's talk
at
about
least
this earthquake,
36,000
really
people
fucked up.
are dead. And I think that's just in Turkey. And that number is continuing to rise more and more and more. They're still looking through the rubble. Now, one of the things that was so devastating about this is not only that it was a really, really strong earthquake, but a lot of these buildings in Turkey, maybe about half of the buildings in Turkey, are not really up to code to deal with a strong earthquake.
Yep.
And in the case of Syria, they're in an equally bad scenario, except they're also not getting any aid that comes in to help them because of sanctions against them. So it's just a really horrendous situation all the way around. So again, we'll get to the video in a second. I'll show you the horrible carnage on the ground. Just everybody warning in advance. When we get to the video, it's tough. But this is an NPR here. Videos show Turkey's Erdogan boasted letting builders avoid earthquake codes. Well, that's good. That's good. This is like the story we just discussed about the train derailment in Ohio, the toxic chemical fire, the wildlife dying everywhere, an entire Ohio town being poisoned, and all of it stems back to the industry said, don't make us upgrade our brakes. That costs money. We're going to keep using these Civil War era brakes.
Yep, remember
so in
we
other
talked
words,
about this.
Avoiding new regulations because it costs money, and as a result of it, poisoning everybody in sight. And having an absolute ecological and environmental catastrophe and disaster and rampant health problems. I mean, it's like, it's a joke, right? Because the answer is so straightforward. It was just, hey, suck it up, pay the money, do the goddamn upgrades. Just do the upgrades. It's $55 billion industry. And they were like, no, we don't want to do that. Again, here you have Erdogan bragging. Yeah, you pay a little extra money, basically a bribe, and you're good. You don't have to do the building codes. Well, Turkey's on top of multiple fault lines. This isn't just like a casual choice and a flippant decision with no consequences. The consequences are now you have 36,000, more than that, dead bodies. Jesus Christ. As Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan struggles to defend his response to last Monday's devastating 7.8 magnitude earthquake, videos from a few years back have emerged showing him hailing some of the housing projects that crumbled, killing thousands of people. Critics say contractors were allowed to skip crucial safety regulations, increasing their profits, but putting residents at risk. The videos have fueled public outrage over slow efforts to help residents in the aftermath of the massive quake, the world's deadliest in over a decade, that killed more than 35,000 people in Turkey and neighboring Syria and left many injured and without a home, food, or heating in the middle of the winter. In one video taken during a campaign stop ahead of Turkey's March 2019 local elections, Erdogan listed some of his government's top achievemkahmemonmahs, including new housing for the city of Kahramanmaraş, also known as Maras, near the epicenter of last week's quake. Quote, "We solved the problem of 144,156 citizens of Mars with zoning amnesty," Erdogan said, using his term for the construction amnesties handed out to allow contractors to ignore the safety codes that had been put on the books specifically to make apartment blocks, houses, and office buildings more resistant to earthquakes. Engineers and architects say the lack of safety features designed to absorb the shock of earthquakes likely contributed to the soaring death toll. Yet again, lack of good regulations that are enforced, it's deadly. It's super duper.
I'm trying to like put a charger in, but it's oh my god, what a cheap ass piece of shit.
Deadly. This is why you have regulations. This is why you have regulations. Another analogy. We got rid of the regulations on Wall Street in the financial sector, got rid of Glass-Steagall, and oh, would you look at that? We had the 2007 and 2008 subprime mortgage crisis and Great Recession.
Yep.
These things have consequences, man. So let's get to the video, and you'll see just how bad it is on the ground there.
This morning, but hope in finding more survivors is fading. This morning, the desperate search for survivors as a critical window to find people alive narrows, and the death toll tops 28,000. The UN warning that number could double.
I think it's really difficult to estimate. And that's terrifying.
This dramatic drone footage capturing the scale of the destruction in Turkey. U.S. military aircraft and supplies now arriving to aid in the response, as members of USAID used dogs to scour more than 630 sites across the city, determined to find life buried deep within the debris.
It's still possible, but it seems like these rescues are happening fewer and fewer.
Yeah, it's many days beyond now. So naturally, the temperature, the climate's pretty rough here, and the type of collapse and structures that are down on them are make it very difficult for them.
But as hope fades, still miraculous stories of survival as rescuers work tirelessly, cutting through collapsed buildings. In Hatay, Turkey, a 2-month-old baby pulled from the rubble of a decimated building, onlookers applauding. Nearby, a 7-year-old boy pulled from the earth after 136 hours. First responders working desperately to save his life. This video from the 138th hour, filmed by the Istanbul rescue teams, showing the harrowing rescue of a mother and son. And incredibly, 147 hours after the quake, this 10-year-old girl now free. These glimmers of hope amidst the devastation as first responders from around the globe descend on the quake zone, braving aftershocks, freezing cold, and dangerous conditions. Here, you see rubble and debris collapsing on rescue workers as they scramble to find survivors. And here, a family of 5, saved from the wreckage and mounds of debris, rescue workers passing them along a human chain to safety. And as the search goes on, arrests. This property developer taken into custody, authorities say, as he tried to leave the country. Turkish prosecutors ordering the detention of more than 100 people involved in the construction of buildings that collapsed.
It's funny because the Turkish president allowed them to cut corners. So,
will they also be arresting President Erdogan? Because he greenlit this entire thing. Are they going to be arresting him?
And in Syria, there have been massive challenges with access. In hard-hit Aleppo, rescuers using excavators searching through tons of rubble, still hoping to find anyone alive. Now, the anguish taking its toll. The earthquake was light, and then the building suddenly collapsed. Everyone died, and I don't remember anything. I don't even remember the days or the hours.
Look, you have to lift the sanctions on Syria. You have to be able to get help in there. I mean, this is a massive humanitarian catastrophe. You can't take a political situation, a war, these international issues that are unrelated to this particular disaster and let that cloud your judgment. It's just, it's the right thing to do from a humanitarian perspective, a morality and ethics perspective. It's illogical to be against helping them. It's crazy. So lift the sanctions, help Syria. I hope Turkey gets more help. Clearly they need it. You got these terrible stories of, people. One guy talked about how he survived and they were able to dig him out after days, but he said, I stopped hearing people a few days back, man. There were other people who were buried near me, and I heard them until a few days back I stopped hearing them. So they had passed away, and he ended up surviving. What a terrible, terrible situation. Now, look, on the building regulation thing, here's what the counter-argument is. Let's be as kind as we can be. Let's steel man the opponent. The argument they make is, look, you don't want... If you get rid of all these onerous rules and regulations, all the red tape, as they call it, what happens? Well, you get rid of all the red tape, and then these builders don't want to make a bad building. They don't want to basically put out a bad product, because then people are going to know it's bad, and they'll get a bad reputation, and in the free marketplace, they'll just fail on their own merits. That's the argument they make. And the response to that is, some of these problems take 15 years, 20 years to manifest. And people might not know. They're in an unsafe building, or they have a product that's bound to malfunction until the catastrophe, the disaster arrives, and then it's too late, and then people are dead. I mean, think about this argument in the context of, like, pharmaceutical companies. Like, you don't need rules and regulations and people who are experts in safety to deal with the drugs. Because obviously the company wants to put out a good product or the reputation will be harmed. So they're going to put out the best product they can, whether or not there are rules.
No.
And it's like, no, a lot of these people are unscrupulous snake oil salesmen.
This is insane, dude.
Some of the products will be total bullshit, and it's totally based off placebo effect and nothing else. Some
This
of these
is
products
insane,
end up being
dude.
pulled from the market after we learned, actually, that one kind of poisoned you. It's not a cure. It's part of the problem. So the argument it doesn't add up. A lot of the arguments from this super libertarian perspective on regulations, it's all theory. There's no connection with the real world. Like, yeah, in theory, you can conceptualize of a situation where a company would always do the right thing because they care about their reputation, and so they do a good job for the sake of doing a good job and for the sake of putting out a good product. But it just turns out that in reality, not everybody is an honest actor. And a lot of people are going to cut a lot of corners to make more profit. They care more about the short-term benefit than the long-term viability of the company.
Beat a kid in
So
Walmart.
it's
At gunpoint.
You need building regulations. You need codes.
And
You
it
need
makes
to
me
have them
cry
up to strict
to even
standards.
look at 'em.
If you live on the Florida coast, you're going to want building codes that can withstand Category 5 hurricanes. Because guess what? Every now and then, you're going to get hit with a really strong hurricane.
Yep.
Should we not have that rule for places that are right on the coast in hurricane-prone areas? I certainly wouldn't want to live in one of those structures, would you? It's so obvious, but again, there are people who will contest it. The economic libertarians, the anarcho-capitalists, who think regulations are always burdensome, they're always onerous, they're always unnecessary, it's always authoritarian on the part of the government. It's just a childish view. It really is. So anyway, there you have it. My heart goes out to Turkey. My heart goes out to Syria. What a horrendous situation. If you want to see...
Yeah, dude, that's crazy. Thank you, Kyle Kalinske. Guys, check him out. Yeah, the Turkey situation... the whole Turkey situation is really terrible, and I hope everyone... You know what I mean? I hope everyone can get out of that. In one piece. And I know everyone can't, but shit. The only earthquake I've ever felt, and I don't even know if it was an earthquake. I think it was an earthquake. But it was when I was little. In PA. My dad was tucking me into bed, and there was like a little bit of a, literally, I don't know, it was weird. There was like a little bit of a shake. And that's the only thing I ever felt, though. I don't know what the fuck that was. I don't know if that was an explosion nearby. Like, I don't know. Felt like an earthquake, though. Let's talk about Lula smacks down CNN host.
President Lula da Silva of Brazil recently came to the U.S. for a visit, and it seems like he was a busy man. He was hanging out with Biden. I'm unaware of what issues in particular he was pressing Biden on, but knowing the kind of a politician Lula is, I'm sure he was trying to get his view imparted on Biden on a number of issues. He also had a meeting with Bernie Sanders.
Ooh.
That, of course, lit up left-wing Twitter. He did an interview here with Christiane Amanpour, and Breaking Points found this clip. It's really interesting. They're talking about the Russia-Ukraine war, and he talks about what his role is in the war and on the international scene. And he kind of smacks down Christiane here. So let's take a look, and then I'll explain more about Lula's foreign policy and why he would take the position that he's taking here.
Like you're going to come up against President Biden on a key defense of the United States of democracy around the world, and that is Ukraine. You do not believe, I don't think, in the Western support for Ukraine's defense, and you have said it many times. Why not? I mean, some people have asked, in fact, an article, why is Lula so committed to democracy at home and not abroad?
Well, I am highly committed with democracy in any part of the planet Earth. What I believe is that in the case of Ukraine and Russia, it is necessary to have someone talking about peace. It's necessary that we should build up interlocutors to talk with the different parties that are in confrontation. That's my thesis. We need to find interlocutors that could sit with President Putin and show to him the mistake that he made to invade the territorial integrity of the Ukrainian territory. And we have to show to Ukraine that they have to talk more so that we can avoid this war. We have to stop the war. And so why I'm going to talk with President Biden. I don't know what he's going to say to me, but what I want to say to him is the following. It is necessary to build a set of countries to negotiate peace.
And he asked you to send his leopards to Ukraine, and you said no.
No, it was not the tanks, it was ammunition.
Okay, ammunition.
I didn't want to send, because if I sent the ammunition, I would join the war. If I sent the ammunition from Brazil, the ammunition that you're asking for.
But you just agreed that it was defense.
This will take us to war. I don't want to go join the war. I want to end with the war. I don't want to join the war. I want to end with the war.
So that was really interesting. That was a very interesting perspective because, look, the way that the United States looks at it, or I should say the way some people in the United States look at it, is by us giving Ukraine weapons, we're just effectively aiding their defense against an aggressive invader, an imperialist invader.
Okay.
And so that's why I think many people, and understandably so, say, yeah, I get it. I get it. But at some point, the question does become, well, is there a difference between quote-unquote defensive weapons and offensive weapons? We're also kind of engaging in a proxy war with Russia by doing this. And then what's the limiting principle? Like, how far are we willing to go? Because at the very beginning, Biden ruled out certain kinds of weapons as, hey, that's too much of an escalation. And it's almost like we're asking for retaliation from Russia if we cross a certain line or certain lines. And then as time has gone by, it's like, nah, just send them everything they need. Now, look, again,
does Kyle Kalinske have green eyes? They look kind of green.
I get it. I support Ukraine and their territorial sovereignty, and they were the ones who were invaded. They were the victim. So this is a rare instance where the U.S. being involved, at least in the sense that they're providing some semblance of weaponry so Ukraine can defend itself, it's not nearly as morally egregious as like our illegal and offensive invasion of Iraq, or our invasion of Afghanistan and occupation of Afghanistan, or our illegal drone war in the Middle East, or our shadow war in Africa. I think there's more of an argument for what we've done there, but you got to realize you're constantly playing with fire, because Russia is a nuclear-armed country, and the cries of World War III of like, hey, be careful here, we're treading on thin ice, those are legitimate. I don't know how to get through to people that it's not hyperbolic to say we're playing with fire and this could very easily spiral out of control into World War III. Because if you do this tit-for-tat escalation and then you just run it out a year or two more, at some point, you know, there's a point of no return. So how do you deal with this? Well, what Lula da Silva says is, effectively, hey, I'm a pragmatist. Even if Lula had the same sort of moral intuitions as many people, that, yeah, Ukraine is defending itself, so they have every right to defend themselves, so I'm fine with aiding them to defend themselves. He's saying somebody needs to play the role of mediator and person who negotiates and person who gets everybody in a room and person who says, hey, I have no dog in this fight. And so let's come to some sort of an agreement and some kind of terms here where we can escape. And it's not the worst case scenario. There was a big story that broke a couple days ago, which the U.S. media didn't cover at all, which is Naftali Bennett of Israel came out and said, we basically had the outline of a peace deal between Zelensky and Putin, Ukraine and Russia early on in the war. And then the West came in, the U.S. came in and axed it and said, no. So now you can make the argument the U.S. was saying, we don't want to engage in appeasement and give Putin a lot of what he wants, thereby incentivizing Putin to go further and take more territory illegally. I understand that argument, but nobody even knew that this happened, right? That this was on the table, and it maybe could have been an actual solution, albeit an imperfect one, a solution that makes everybody on all sides mad, but it could be better, of course, than a worst case scenario. So there was the potential of a happy ending, or at least a less bad ending, if you will. So just to put this in perspective for you, this is the kind of guy Lula is. We've talked about this before. His foreign policy approach is basically sheer pragmatism. According to The Economist, Lula had a pragmatic foreign policy, seeing himself as a negotiator, not an ideologue, a leader adept at reconciling opposites. As a result, he befriended, not briefed, both Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez and U.S. President George W. Bush. Lula also gained increasing stature in the Southern Hemisphere through economic growth in Brazil. In 2008, he was said to have become a point man for healing regional crises, as in the escalation of tensions between Colombia, Venezuela, and Ecuador. Former finance minister and current advisor Delfim Neto said, Lula is the ultimate pragmatist. So in other words, this guy is outcomes-based. He's, how do we de-escalate? How do we find a road out of this? How do we find some semblance of peace? And he's working with people who many people would consider, and maybe rightly so, monsters. But he's not drawing hard lines. He understands we have to engage with the world as it is, not as we wish it would be, and we have to try to make lemonade out of lemons.
I agree.
That's his foreign policy approach summed up. And so I'm happy that somebody is trying to play the role that Lula is playing with this role in Russia and Ukraine, with the illegal invasion of Ukraine by Russia. I'm happy that somebody's trying to...
I'm glad Lula's at least asking for peace, you know, and he's not like a war hawk or whatever, just trying to go to war. I'm not saying that Ukraine shouldn't defend themselves. I'm totally pro-Ukraine, you know. I'm also like, I hope Russia like stops. But we'll see what happens, man.
Play the role of the objective arbiter who, comes into the room and says, let me hear out everybody and let's try to find a way out of this. But what's crazy is that it's viewed as controversial, right? Like, it is viewed as controversial. Why? Because, in the U.S. media, it's just Putin is Hitler. And so anybody who is trying to find a way out or some sort of peace deal or do some sort of negotiation with Hitler is viewed as, you're just Neville Chamberlain, who's viewed as like the biggest rube in modern history, right? And so like, I get where they're coming from with that perspective, but I just think it's very rigid in not entertaining the idea that maybe Putin's not Hitler, right? He could be evil, he could be a dictator, he could be all these terrible things, but also could be more connected to reality than a guy like Adolf Hitler. And
Yeah.
again, I don't think that's a controversial statement, but some people would find it controversial, right? They don't understand that there's like a spectrum of evil. And, you know, we live in a very nuanced and complicated and complex world. It's not as simple as like, everybody's Hitler and that's the only analogy you can make to history.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like, yeah,
sure.
that is the perspective of many people in U.S. media, many U.S. politicians. And so, you know, Lula will be castigated for this, but I'm happy that somebody is trying to play that role because it's always worth a shot, right? It's always worth a shot to try to find a way out of this because the alternatives are terrifying. And I think Lula understands that. And so much respect to him. And you could see that Christiane Amanpour, CNN host, it's like it's not computing what Lula's position is.
All right, folks, next one. Thank you, Kyle. I love you. Kyle, you are amazing. Okay.
So it turns out Donald Trump, the former president, is completely psychotic. That's right. So this story out in the Rolling Stone. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but man. Headline here, Trump plans to bring back firing squads, group executions if he retakes the White House. And there's more.
Bro, what the fuck?
There's more. But they say here the former president wants to expand the use of the death penalty and expand the federal government's options for carrying out death sentences. So in a bit, I'll get to how there was already a hint of this near the end of his administration back in 2020, but they write here, quote, what do you think of firing squads, end quote. That's the question Donald Trump repeatedly asked some close associates in the run-up to the 2024 presidential campaign. 3 people familiar with the situation tell Rolling Stone. It's not an idle inquiry. The former president, if reelected, is still committed to expanding the use of the federal death penalty and bringing back banned methods of execution, the sources say. This is where he steps it up. He has even, one of those sources recounts, mused about televising footage of executions, including showing condemned prisoners in the final moment.
So is he doing a fucking George Carlin bit, guys? Is Trump doing a George Carlin bit? Because George Carlin literally talks about this, guys. What is going on? Look at this shit, guys.
The same way we made up the death penalty. We made them both up, sanctity of life and the death penalty. Aren't we versatile? And you know, in this country now, there are a lot of people who want to expand the death penalty to include drug dealers. This is really stupid. Drug dealers aren't afraid to die. They're already killing each other every day on the streets by the hundreds. Drive-bys, gang shootings, they're not afraid to die. Death penalty doesn't mean anything unless you use it on people who are afraid to die.
This is why I love George Carlin, guys. He predicts the future. Now Trump is Trump is literally trying to like do George Carlin, but into politics.
Wouldn't you like to hear Dan Dierdorf explain the Monday night crucifixions? You'd have people tuning in don't even care about football. Wouldn't you like to hear Dan Dierdorf explain why the nails have to go in at a certain angle? And I'll guarantee you one thing, you start executing, you start nailing one white banker per week to a big wooden cross on national TV, you're going to see that drug traffic begin to slow down pretty fucking quick. Pretty fucking quick.
Here's where Trump and George Carlin differ, though. George Carlin wants to put capital punishment on the bankers. Trump would do capital punishment on the poor people and the drug dealers. Which is never going to solve the issue because poverty causes people to do things like this, you know what I mean? As long as you have poverty, people are going to keep doing crime like that. And corrupt people, if you let them get away with it, then the crime and poverty is never going to stop. I'll go back to the other one, though.
Moments of their lives. Making it sort of a spectacle think The Apprentice crossed with total sociopaths. So this is what they do in, places like Saudi Arabia, where there are these public executions, and it's a big event. Is that what you want?
Call a crackhead.
A normally functioning, okay society to live in, where public executions, televised executions, are just a part of the culture? If Americans weren't already devastated enough by the amount of violence that exists. But they also right here, specifically Trump has talked about bringing back death by firing squad, by hanging, and according to sources, possibly even by guillotine. This is almost comical in how completely insane this entire thing is. He has also, sources say, discussed group executions. Trump has floated these ideas while discussing planned campaign rhetoric and policy desires, as well as his disdain for President Biden's approach to crime. I gotta say, I don't think this is a winning position.
Nope.
If this is what Donald Trump, if this is one of his big pillars that he's going to run on, is group executions, guillotines, hanging, televised executions, I think he's already got that base down. I don't think he's really reaching out to any new people. With,
he's going to lose
this position. In at least one instance late last year, according to the third source who has direct knowledge of the matter, Trump privately mused about the possibility of creating a flashy government-backed video ad campaign that would accompany a federal revival of these execution methods. In Trump's vision, these videos would include footage from these new executions, if not from the exact moments of death. Quote, the former president believes this would help put the fear of God into violent criminals, this source says. He wanted to do some of these things while he was in office, but for whatever reason...
Yo, we live in a fucking dystopia.
So, before I get to how stupid the idea is that scaring people into doing good is going to keep them away from potential crime, I just want to share that he already kind of hinted at this, as they mentioned there in his announcement. So check out this piece of his announcement for his new run.
But we're going to be asking everyone who sells drugs, gets caught selling drugs, to receive the death penalty for their heinous acts, because it's the only way.
It's the only way, he says. The only way to...
You guys do know Trump does uppers, right? Like he has pills and shit. Let me see. Let me show you guys. Trump. Desk with pills. Look at this. This picture right here, if you zoom into this picture. If you zoom into that picture, you can see in these cabinets, there's a better quality picture somewhere, I don't know where, but in that drawer, he has pills that you can only get from Europe, because in Europe they add a certain chemical, I guess, that in America it's illegal. Yeah, see? There's those, it's right here, X whatever. What a dummy. But yeah. So he's a druggie, dude.
To stop drug dealers is with the death penalty. Do you think people that get into selling drugs, do you think they do it because that's what they want to be doing? They always desire to sell drugs when they grew up. It's a lack of opportunity. It's a need to survive. It's a lack of housing. These are all issues that need to be addressed in a systemic way, with guaranteed housing, with actual opportunities, with real investments into communities that often are food deserts, are just completely void of any actual functioning system when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to food, when it comes to job opportunities. That is how you properly address an issue like this, is you properly invest into public education, into housing, into these communities that are being left behind. That is the problem. Threatening even further or longer sentences or the death penalty is not going to do anything to address this problem. Because if that was the issue, then the U.S. would be the leader in being in their ability to clamp down on crime. They would be leading the world in peace because of the amount of people that they put in jail. And I'm sure you all are already aware of this, but this is from the Prison Policy Initiative. Not only does the U.S. have the highest incarceration rate in the world, every single U.S. state incarcerates more people per capita than virtually any independent democracy on earth. To be sure, states like New York and Massachusetts appear progressive in their incarceration rates compared to states like Louisiana, but compared to the rest of the world, every U.S. state relies too heavily on prisons and jails to respond to crime. So Louisiana is the worst in the world. And go down the list here. These are all states until you get to the U.S., of course. Then you get to El Salvador, Turkmenistan, Rwanda, Cuba, Thailand. The vast majority of states incarcerate more per capita than independent countries.
Oh my God.
If the issue, or if this was the way to solve crime, throwing people in jail or the death penalty, then you would have a lot less crime. You wouldn't have this situation where there are people who, in order to survive, in order to make money, they need to figure out something. And of course, the vast majority of these crimes are somehow connected to drugs. There are actual solutions that could be looked at. Look at a country like Portugal, for example, with their decriminalization method back almost 20 years ago now, I think. And immediately, rates when it came to addiction came down, drug use came down, because they not only decriminalized all drugs, but also put money into healthcare to deal with people who were suffering.
That's what we
from
in America need to do.
Their addictions and getting to the heart of the issue when it comes to oftentimes depression, anxiety, trauma. That is how you solve a lot of these issues. And of course, that is not going to be dealt with or properly addressed by Donald Trump. Now, also worth mentioning here, the former president's zeal for the death penalty has already proven lethal. During the final month of his administration, he oversaw the executions of 13 federal prisoners. Since 1963, only 3 federal prisoners had been executed, including Oklahoma City bomber and mass murderer Timothy McVeigh. In January 2021, in the final stretch before Biden would become president, Trump oversaw 3 executions in 4 days. So this isn't just talk. This isn't just, oh, it's just a story for the newspapers. No, he's already put into practice what he is.
He's gonna fucking execute everybody that protests against him, guys. Like, guys, shit's getting serious.
Saying behind the scenes. And on that point as well, during his final months, Trump's approval of hanging and firing squads is a national embarrassment. You may have forgot, I forgot this happened because, of course, so much was happening near the end of his administration, but this is one of the things that he did. Writing here, the federal government now will be able to hang, electrocute, gas, or shoot individuals if it does not want to kill them by lethal injection. And now this appears to be what Trump is going to be encouraging if he were to get back in power. You have something like this at the top. Think of the way that permeates through the rest of the culture. Just look over 4 years of Trump. the massive increase in hate crimes, in division. Now multiply that with a second Trump term, where he brings in, stuff like televised executions. It would be a complete disaster.
All right, folks. Oh, God, depression everywhere. Let's talk about Walmart using slave labor for watermelon supply.
This is quite a story here, I must say. This isn't a raw story. Company owner forced over a dozen workers into slavery. This is according to the feds. A Florida contractor was sentenced to nearly a decade in prison in order to repay more than a dozen workers he forced into slavery.
A Florida man.
Vladimir Moreno, a Bartow farm labor contractor, pleaded guilty December 29 to conspiracy to commit forced labor and racketeering charges after federal prosecutors said he recruited workers in Mexico, made them pay to work for Los Villatoros Harvesting, and lied about their housing and pay once they arrived in Florida, reported the Miami Herald. LVH and its recruiters manipulated the workers by withholding their pay, violated federal law by moving them to an unapproved Florida farm, and then intermittently to Kentucky and Indiana to harvest watermelons for Wachila's Farms, which does business as Sunfresh Farms, and that fruit was sold to Walmart and Kroger. So the watermelons that you buy, some of them from Walmart and Kroger, were flat out made with slave labor. Jesus Christ, man. This reminds me of, what was it, that Supreme Court case where the Supreme Court basically said Nestle is like legally allowed to do slavery and have people who they get some of their products from countries that are using slavery, and they're like, hey man, it's too far down the chain for us to really give a shit or do anything about it. I remember covering that story when it broke, and that guy Neil Kashkari, I think, was one of the lawyers in it on the side of the slavery. So, insane. We covered a story relatively recently, similar to this, about slavery that was busted. I think it was in South Carolina in that story. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, this is modern day stuff. Modern day stuff. Now, by the way, even the ones who are not slaves, like let's say a different watermelon company, I'm sure a lot of the people working in the fields doing the real hard work are undocumented immigrants, and they're probably getting paid less than a living wage.
Yep. A lot of them get paid under the table. They get paid less than minimum wage, and if they ever tell on their employer, they will get deported. And the employer gets a little slap on the wrist, fine, and they pay it off, and that's good.
Anyway, so take your choice. It's like indentured servitude or slavery at the bottom of the chain here. We have an economy that's built on flat-out exploitation. And when you look at this, it's hard to say good things about capitalism looking at this, right? Isn't it? Because you guys know the trick. You guys know how it works. There's a Victims of Communism museum in Washington, D.C., where they talk about, oh, look, all the death count related from communism and socialism, bro. This is crazy, bro. Right across the street from the Victims of Communism museum is a park where there's like dozens and dozens of homeless tents and homeless encampments and probably 70 homeless people. Now, are those people in that park who are homeless victims of capitalism? My guess is the people who work at the Victims of Communism Museum would be like, no, bro, that's their problem. That's their own fault. It's their individual issue.
Literally.
So let me get this straight. The negatives and the ills that are a byproduct of capitalism are not the fault of capitalism, but the negatives and the ills that are a byproduct of socialism are the fault of socialism. I don't know, man. I don't know. That doesn't seem right to me. Seems like you have to have a consistent standard in one direction or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
literally.
Let's continue. LVH and its recruiters manipulated the workers. Oh, we already did that part. Other melons packed in Indiana were by a distributor to chains such as Kroger, Schnucks, and Sam's Club. Moreno's guilty plea indicated he knew that about 6 workers were living in a single hotel room. Jesus Christ.
Oh, my God.
And 75 more were housed in a warehouse. Oh, my God.
75?
And investigators found that workers lacked their own beds
or
packed with more than 4 in a room. A federal judge sentenced him to 9 years and 10 months in federal prison with $173,125 restitution to 17 of the workers, which comes out to an average of $10,118 per worker. I'd love to know how that works out in terms of an hourly rate for them, depending on how many hours they worked, you know. Moreno is also a defendant in a North Carolina federal civil court class action lawsuit on similar complaints, and he was banned from participating in the H-2A temporary agricultural workers visa program and fined more than $203,000. There's exploitation left and right, man. I mean, the messed up thing is there are subtle forms of exploitation where they can sort of convince you it's not exploitation, and then there's just like overt, brazen forms of exploitation like this, where you have literal modern-day slavery right under our nose in Florida. It seems to me like there is a lot that is structurally wrong with our system. Like, we need a page 1 rewrite. Just total top-down reformation.
We need a fucking reset, yo.
Rip it up, start over, right? Because something like this that was just casually happening.
Turn this shit off and
How many more
on.
stories like this are out there where the feds did not catch on to it? And they did not bust the slavery ring, right? How? How'd that happen? How many? I'd be curious to know. I don't know if anybody has an analysis that sort of gives rough numbers on it, but Jesus, man, it's just so disconcerting. I mean, we talk all the time about, like, the working poor, people who work full-time and they don't make enough money to survive. We just did a story where nearly half of workers, the exact number was 37% of workers, work more than one full-time job. All these little things are just, they add up, and it's just astonishing how broken our system is, how disgusting it is. And then you see something like this, and it's just like, you know what? Time for something totally new, dog. Time for something totally new.
Yeah.
Because I bet this is more widespread than anybody can imagine. Credit to the Miami Herald. Credit to everybody who did the work on this, because, you know, you wouldn't know about it otherwise. And by the way, not a shout-out, anti-shout-out to CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, the Nightly News, and all the media outlets that are not going to touch this at all, right? Maybe they'll run an article or whatever, but is there going to be big breaking news, slavery found in Florida?
No.
They're not going to do it?
No.
Because, again, their outrage meter in the media is broken. It's broken. They don't know what's actually outrageous and messed up. They don't know their ass from their elbow, to steal a phrase that my dad used to use all the time. They just don't know. And they don't care. And so that's why you guys come here, which, you know, doesn't say anything about how good I am. It's just to show you how bad mainstream media is.
No, you're good, bro. You're good.
That's terrible. Anyway, that's the show, guys. Sorry to end it on such a sad note, such a sour note here, but do me a favor, like and subscribe. Trying to get to 1 million subs. We're climbing, baby. We're climbing. So do me a favor, help us get there. Click that bell icon so you get a notification every time a video drops. You can also check out the full show now on Spotify. You get the full daily shows over on Spotify, so check that out if you haven't yet. And, yeah, what else I got for you? Of course, endless love to the Patreon supporters of this show. You guys make it work. Never talk to an advertiser. Never will. Don't need any corporate sponsors. We have you guys. We build it from the bottom up. And shout out to all the Substack support. Ben Shapiro, we got Squeaky Ben Shapiro made it in the show today. So he is talking about the protests in Cuba. Not at all surprised that he's doing that. It's interesting. I'm not sure. You guys tell me. Did he talk about what's happening in Colombia? How there have been protests for months and there's been an uprising for months? Did he talk about what's happening in Ethiopia? There's ethnic cleansing going on there. What about Myanmar, where there's you know,
I know about Myanmar.
ethnic cleansing of the Rohingya Muslim population? Did he talk about Haiti in any detail? There's a number of places, as all of you guys know, the Congo, Sudan, Yemen, where the U.S. is actively helping facilitate a genocide being carried out by Saudi Arabia against the Yemeni people, where they're starving the country. They're not allowing food or medicine in.
Yep, that's true.
has he talked about these other countries where there's massive unrests and protests and all these gigantic problems? I don't think he's talked about it with the same kind of urgency and speed that he's talked about Cuba. But nonetheless, he decided, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and talk about Cuba. But he
let's prepare for Ben Shapiro to shit on Cuba.
Somehow makes it about Colin Kaepernick. Watch.
And so I have a proposal. 1-for-1 trade. Every single dissident who wants to fly the American flag and believes in American freedom, for all of the Americans who spit on the American flag and see it as a symbol of repression and evil. How about that? Willing to make that trade right now. Now, in reality, American citizens can't be expelled simply because they don't like the flag, because we do have freedom of speech. But in principle, the folks who are marching in Cuba for liberty right now and flying the American flag are better Americans than the Americans who stand around spitting on the American flag and pretending that it is a symbol of repression and evil. You know who those people are? People who have never lived under true repression and evil. Seriously. If you live under the threat of true repression and evil, the American flag is the symbol of liberty. If you live in America, a place of liberty, we have this ungrateful, rather despicable distaste for our own freedom. We've gotten so used to being fat and lazy and rich.
Yo, I hate this dude's face. Like, his lips are weird. He has very long ears, and then he looks like a little twink.
And free. That we seem to forget that there are people all over the planet who live like that, and that for most of human history, none of that was the rule. And meanwhile, you have, again, the sickening specter of Americans kneeling for the American flag while living in the richest and freest country in the history of the world. I promise you, Colin Kaepernick would not trade places with any one of these Cuban dissidents. I promise you, Ilhan Omar would not be trading places with any one of the people living in Hong Kong right now. None of these people ever are willing to put their money where their mouth is when it comes to ripping the United States and talking about how evil it is.
So there's a number of things to say. First of all, if you watch his entire segment, he doesn't mention the U.S. embargo on Cuba once.
Yep.
He doesn't mention it. And I have to say, anybody who's talking about the issue of Cuba and they don't bring up the embargo, they're either incredibly ignorant on the facts, or they're stupid, or they're lying to you for ideological reasons. Now, you could take your pick. I'm not going to say which of those things Ben Shapiro is, but you can determine for yourself which one you think is the most accurate. But it is incredibly dishonest to talk about what's happening in Cuba without bringing up the U.S. embargo. We have 240 sanctions on that country. The protests were very clear.
Holy shit, 240 sanctions on Cuba? I didn't even know that shit. That is insane, dude. That is too much. Like, why? Why not just build a friendship with them, man? That's what I'm...
Clear. There's a shortage of food. There's a shortage of medical supplies. They want more food. They want more medical supplies. If the U.S. lifts the embargo, that would instantly help the people of Cuba. It's not an opinion. That's a fact. So to not bring that up and to pretend like, oh no, it's all just for, they're protesting for freedom and democracy. That's your interpretation when they said up front, immediately, the very first thing was shortage of food and shortage of medical supplies. And by the way, Ben omits what? There are now pro-government protests that are just as big as the anti-government ones. But he omits that. So he's going to omit everything that doesn't fit his narrative. That's what Ben Shapiro does. To not bring up the embargo is a crime. He did a whole segment on Cuba and didn't bring up the embargo. Now, let's get to all of his points here. He says, first, oh, I want to trade the Americans who protest the flag for Cubans who don't. Think about what he's saying there. His point is, only Americans who agree with me, Ben Shapiro, count. So
only far-right wing fucking Christo-fascist, far-right Israeli, what are they called? The ones that hate the Palestinians. You know what I mean. Israeli nationalists.
All this stuff that these guys like to say about intellectual diversity and tolerance of other ideas and open dialogue. and free speech and free expression. It's all bullshit. He just told you, I would rather have ideological homogeneity than have ideological diversity. That's what he just said. The Americans who want to protest the flag, I'd rather have them out of the country and Cubans who love the American flag in the country. So you want people who ideologically are more aligned with you and the ones who don't agree with you to get out. And this is the other thing. You'll see this all the time with Ben. He strawmans his opponents, and he doesn't steelman them. So when somebody protests the U.S. flag, he just interprets that as, you hate America, and you're un-American, and that's disrespectful. That's a straw man of their position. Because if you talk to people who've protested the U.S. flag, talk to Colin Kaepernick, who he brings up derisively at the end, he'll tell you exactly why he's doing it, and none of the reasons are, America's really bad and I don't like it, it's terrible, I'm against America. Nobody says that when they protest the flag.
That's bullshit.
Do you want to listen to people's actual concerns and then respond to it? Or would you rather just pretend anybody who's not on my political team hates America by definition and wants to actively make America worse?
Yeah.
Usually when people are protesting the flag, they have a broader point, and their whole point is, let's fix this issue to make America better. They're trying to improve America. But he doesn't even grant them that basic proposition. He just smears them and strawmans them, and they're all bad people, and they all just hate America. It's so lazy. And I don't know how anybody watches that and thinks he's nailing it. Then he goes on to say, this I love because he pretends to be the facts over feelings guy. The American flag is the symbol of liberty. That's what he said. Ben, the American flag is the symbol of everything American. Everything America has done. That's what that flag represents. That's a fact. Your interpretation of it is an opinion. The American flag only represents liberty, or it represents liberty. Well, hold on now. If it represents everything America has done, it does represent the good things, but it also represents the bad things. So does it represent the Constitution and free speech and the New Deal?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It absolutely represents those things. And helping to
Slavery.
defeat the Nazis? Absolutely. It represents all those wonderful things. You know what else it represents? Slavery. Jim Crow,
Incarceration of
Native American
Japanese.
genocide, Japanese internment.
Yep.
Nuking Japanese civilians.
Yep.
The Iraq War.
Yep.
Torture. Abu Ghraib. The list goes on and on.
Yep.
Now, you might not like that, Ben, but facts don't care about your feelings. I don't
Yep.
care if that triggers you. That's what the American flag is. It represents America. It represents the good and the bad. Again, I think that's obvious, but he wants to twist it in his conservative direction. Then he had the nerve to say, you know, people in this country, like Ilhan Omar, Colin Kaepernick, or people who protest the flag, they have a distaste for our own freedom. Again, massive straw man. Of course, they would concede that certain freedoms we have are wonderful. But, you know what's not wonderful? NSA spying, torture, the drug war, locking up nonviolent drug offenders, ruining lives over nonviolent drug offenses. That's not freedom. You get locked up in a cage because you sell a substance that slightly tweaks your consciousness? Nonsense. Or you've taken a substance that slightly tweaks your consciousness and you lose your life and your livelihood and you get locked up and it's all ruined? That's nonsense. Are we really free if we have millions of people who don't have health care? Are we really free if we have, you know, the minimum wage isn't even a living wage? Millions of people work full time and they don't make enough money to survive. In what meaningful sense are we free in that scenario? In what meaningful way are we free? These are all issues that need to be addressed. Now, I'm not saying I hate America. I'm saying let's improve it by addressing these things.
True, yeah.
And the attack on Colin Kaepernick was just the worst because stop and think about it, guys. The Cubans who are protesting, they said the reason why they're protesting, they need more food and they need more medical supplies. That's what they said. So the Cubans are protesting to improve Cuba.
Yeah.
Kaepernick is protesting to improve America. He said it, hey, I want no more police killings and I want a fair justice system.
Yep.
Sure, he wants to end the drug war and free all the nonviolent drug offenders, disproportionately targeted people of color. So Cubans are protesting to try to improve Cuba. Colin Kaepernick is protesting to try to improve America because this is his country. And Ben looks at that and says, the Cubans are freedom fighters and liberty lovers and they're wonderful, but Colin Kaepernick is an ungrateful loser who doesn't appreciate America enough or whatever the fuck. it's just so childish. It's so partisan. It's so pathetic. And again, if Ben really wanted to be consistent, he would talk about all the other countries that are our allies that have authoritarian, repressive governments, and then there are people in the street protesting those governments. But he doesn't talk about those. Because if any protesters are nominally left-wing, their concerns are, by definition, not legit. But if they're potentially right-wing, now everything they're fighting for is legit, and they're freedom fighters, and they're great people, and we should trade Americans who are on the left with people overseas who are on the right. Let's make the trade. Because I'm Ben Shapiro, and I love ideological diversity and freedom. I love freedom so much, I would ideally want to deport you if you don't agree with me about the American flag.
Yeah.
I mean, the loopholes in his logic are legendary, and yet he's considered like the intellectual of the right. Intellectual, my ass cheeks.
Freedom! Let's check out this George Carlin clip before I end it.
The same way we made up the death penalty. We made them both up, sanctity of life and the death penalty. Aren't we versatile? And in this country now, there are a lot of people who want to expand the death penalty to include drug dealers. This is really stupid. Drug dealers aren't afraid to die. They're already killing each other every day on the streets by the hundreds.
Literally.
Drive-bys, gang shootings, they're not afraid to die. Death penalty doesn't mean anything unless you use it on people who are afraid to die. Like the bankers who launder the drug money.
Yep.
Bankers who launder the drug money.
Yep. Get them.
Forget the dealers. You want to slow down that drug traffic, you got to start executing a few of these fucking bankers. White, middle-class Republican bankers. And I'm not talking about soft American executions like lethal injection. I'm talking about fucking crucifixion, folks. Let's bring back crucifixions, a form of capital punishment that Christians and Jews of America can really appreciate.
Yeah, come on, Christians.
And I'd go a little further. I'd crucify people upside down. Like St. Peter, feet up, head down. And naked. I'd have naked upside down crucifixions on TV once a week at halftime of the Monday Night Football game.
Yeah.
Monday night. The Monday Night Crucifixions. You'd have people tuning in, don't even care about football. Wouldn't you like to hear Dan Deerdorf explain why the nails have to go in at a certain angle?
Yeah.
And I'll guarantee you one thing, you start executing, you start nailing one white banker per week to a big wooden cross on national TV, you're going to see that drug traffic begin to slow down pretty fucking quick. Pretty fucking quick. You won't even be able to buy drugs in schools and prisons anymore. Now, I don't care about capital punishment one way or another because I know it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything except maybe satisfy a kind of biblical need for revenge. If you read the Bible, you see that it's full of retribution and revenge. So really, capital punishment is kind of a religious ritual. It's a purification rite. It's a modern sacrament. And as long as that's true, I say, let's liven it up a little. I honestly believe if you make the death penalty a little more entertaining and learn to market it correctly, you just might be able to raise enough money to balance the stupid fucking budget. Balance the stupid fucking budget. And don't forget, the polls show the American people want capital punishment and they want a balanced budget. And I think even in a fake democracy, people ought to get what they want once in a while. Just to feed this illusion that they're really in charge.
True.
Let's use capital punishment the same way we use sports and television in this country to distract people and take their minds off how bad they're being fucked by the upper 1%. Now, Unfortunately, Monday Night Football doesn't last long enough. What we really need is year-round capital punishment on TV every night with sponsors. Gotta have sponsors. I'm sure as long as we're killing people, Marlboro Cigarettes and Dow Chemical will be proud to participate. Proud to participate. Balance the stupid fucking budget. And let me say this to you, my interesting Judeo-Christian friends, not only do I recommend crucifixions, I'd be in favor of bringing back beheadings.
Woo!
Beheadings on TV, slow motion, instant replay. And maybe you could let the heads roll down a little hill.
It's funny because he would be doing beheadings on people like Trump. The 1%, you know, bankers, rich fucks that fuck over everybody.
And fall into one of 5 numbered holes.
Theoretically. In his scenario.
Let the people at home gamble on which hole the head is going to fall into. And you do it in a stadium so the mob can gamble on it too. Raise a little more money. And if you want to expand the violence a little longer to sell a few more commercials, instead of using an axe, you do the beheadings with a handsaw. Woo! Hey, don't bail out on me now, goddammit. The blood is already on our hands. All we're talking about is a matter of degree. You want something a little more delicate? We'll do the beheadings with an olive fork. That would be nice, and it would take a good goddamn long time. There's a lot of good things we could be doing. When's the last time we burned someone at the stake? It's been too long. Here's another form of capital punishment. Comes out of a nice, rich religious tradition. Burning people at the stake. Sponsor, Bridgeford Charcoal. Woo! And you put it on TV on Sunday mornings. The Sunday morning evangelicals send us an offering, praise Jesus, human bonfire.
Yeah.
You don't think that would get big ratings in this sick fucking country?
Oh, yeah, it will.
Shit, you'd have people skipping church to watch this stuff. And you take the money they send in the offerings and you use it
to balance the budgets.
What about boiling people in oil? Boy, those were the days, weren't they? You get the oil going real good, you know, a nice high rolling boil, and then slowly at the end of a rope, you lower the perpetrator head first into the boiling oil. Huh? You talk about fun shit. Woo! And just to encourage citizen participation,
definitely fun.
The mob in the stadium control the speed of the rope. Good, clean, wholesome family entertainment. The kids will love it. The kids will love it. And at the same time they're enjoying themselves, we're teaching them a nice Christian moral lesson.
Yeah.
Boiling people in oil. Sponsor, Crisco. And maybe instead of boiling all these guys, every now and then you can French fry a couple of them, you know?
guy.
French fried felons. Dip a guy in egg batter. Just.
Did he say French?
You can French kiss the guy next to you. You can French kiss the guy next to you.
You know? Kind of a tempura thing, huh? Jeffrey Dahmer never thought of this shit, did he? Jeffrey Dahmer, eat your heart out. Which is an interesting thought in and of itself. All right, enough nostalgia. What about some modern forms of capital punishment? How about we throw a guy off the World Trade Center and whoever he lands on wins the Publishers Clearinghouse? Okay, something a little more sophisticated. You dip a guy in brown gravy and lock him in a small room with a Wolverine who's high on angel dust. Woo! There's one guy.
A Wolverine? Who's high on angel dust? What the fuck does that even mean?
He's not going to be fucking with too many kids at the bus stop for a while.
Why would a Wolverine fuck around with? I mean, unless it's attacking kids, but it's an animal. Is he talking about a human?
Here's something really nice you could do. You shoot a guy out of a high-speed catapult right into a brick wall. Trouble is, it would be over too quick. No good for TV, you know. You'd have to do a whole bunch of guys right in a row.
Yeah.
Rapid fire capital punishment. 15 catapults. While you're shooting off one, you're loading up the others. Of course, every now and then you would have to stop to clean off the wall. Cleanliness. Right next to godliness. All right, high tech. I sense some of yous are waiting for high tech. I got it. You take a small tactical nuclear weapon and stick it up a guy's ass.
Oh my God.
Thermonuclear suppository. Preparation H-bomb. You talk about fallout, huh? Whoa.
Fuck.
Or you take the bomb and you stick it just inside that little hole on the end of a guy's dick, you know? Yeah, a bomb in a dick. When it goes off, the guy wouldn't know whether he was coming or going.
Ah!
Get out of here. I got you. Hey. Listen.
God damn, bro. Imagine putting a mini nuke in your penile. Oh god. Anyways, guys. I hope you guys had a very good day. Hope you guys enjoyed the stream. You know, I had fun. I went to the gym yesterday and like my fucking arms are killing me, man. My arms are hurting. Okay. Let's do a little a subscriber recap.
I have smoked many, many cigars, more than even the most accomplished cigar smoker that you will ever meet. As a point of fact, I'm smoking a cigar right now in an undisclosed location. And I never am without a cigar. When I inhale at night,
I inhale from a giant cigar.
I have smoked many, many cigars, more than even the most accomplished cigar smoker that you will ever meet.
Alright, y'all. Well, that was the last one.
I'm smoking a cigar right now.
I will be back. I will do a gaming stream. I don't know what I should play. I don't know if I'll play Battlefield or Star Wars. But I will be back, folks.